This podcast may contain adult language and themes. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Tokyo Tea Party Podcast, where we have real talk about real life with people living in Japan. I'm your host, Samuel Darbuz. Our topic today is workplace culture. I think it's fair to say that Japan is known for having a damn near puritanical approach to work culture, with long hours, demanding tasks, and adherence to hierarchies and a difficult balance with family and personal life. So, how do people who come here to work from abroad stay above water? I've got two guests today who will help us find out.
Hi, I'm Brittni. I've been in Japan about 8 years, and I've worked in the public school setting, and I'm doing private school currently. So I guess all my experience work-wise has been the education part.
Okay, thank you, Brittni. Brittni is a returning guest. I got a quick question. Do you remember Britney Spears' first single, the title?
Oops, I did it again.
You damn right. Okay, we got our first returning guest. Ooh, we got our first.
No. It's Baby Hit Me One More Time. How dare I?
Oh shit, was it?
But yes,
yeah,
oops, I did it again.
It's close enough. That sounds like 30 years old. But thanks for joining us again, Brittni. This is actually Brittni's. This topic was actually brought to me by Brittni, so one of the things we'll be getting into is why she wanted to talk about it. But before we do that, we have one more wonderful guest.
Hey everybody, I'm Kevin. I've been in Japan for over 10 years. I've worked all over the education sector, but also in things like dispatch companies, Aeon Mall, and a bunch of odd jobs.
Wow, Aeon Mall.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever met anybody who's, I've seen the English conversations schools or classrooms in the Aeon shopping malls. I've seen that before. I've never met anybody who actually worked in one, though.
It was a pretty good experience.
Really? Interesting. Because working in the... I don't know, my American associations with working in the mall are not super pleasant, right?
Same.
Right, but maybe we can hear a little bit about that too. Let's transition, all right? So we're going to go into first question. How would you describe Japanese work culture in one word? So...
Oh, one word, huh?
One word.
Unapologetic.
Ooh, very interesting. Please expand.
I think that because they're just, when it comes to people being sick or people having to make deadlines, they're unapologetic about you basically. Like they need you to worry about the company and get whatever the company needs to have done, whether you're sick or not. Like you can be dragging your soul across the floor, but as long as you get there, that's all that matters.
There's a whole pot of hot tea that we could have just discussing that attitude in the COVID era.
Oh.
Oh Lord. Oh goodness me. But all right. So we have so far unforgiving.
Unapologetic, but unforgiving too.
Oh, sorry. Unapologetic. I should have taken a nap before I did this. Unapologetic. That is a great word. I already said puritanical. So far, we're not painting the most positive picture, but what does Kevin have to say?
I would go with traditional.
Traditional. Yeah, that's a good one too.
There are just so many little rules and regulations that have long since ceased to be of any practical purpose.
Yes.
We just continue on with them because that's what we did before, so we're gonna keep doing it now.
Oh gosh.
Right.
Like
Go ahead, Brittni, go ahead.
No, it's just like exactly what he said. Like, because especially teaching English, it's just like, well, it's worked this way. I'm like, okay, okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of
That's the best way to describe it. Exasperated sigh.
yeah, because like a blind adherence to rules is one of the, I think, biggest downsides to the work culture in this country, because as an English teacher myself, there is this like almost dogmatic relationship with the textbook. The textbook, if the textbook says it is so, it doesn't matter what any native speaker of English has to say. The
Yes.
textbook says it is so, and so it is so.
That's
Even if it's a mistake.
it is law.
So many times I've seen like typos and grammatical errors and just unnatural constructions. And when I first got here, I would try to gently suggest an alternative, and over the years I've given up. Over the years I've just been like, you know what? It's going to be on the center test. It's got a new name now. But whatever, like it's essentially for Americans, it's the SAT equivalent.
Is it TOEIC? TOEFL?
No, the center test is the center test was very much like the American Scholastic Aptitude Test, where students would have to take this test, get a certain score, get above a certain score, and show it to their universities of choice during the application process.
Okay. So it's like the entrance exams, similar, right?
Right. So university entrance exams. That's a good way to describe it. So yeah, if the English on the center test is a certain way, then it's going to be that way in the textbook, in the textbooks as well, in the English textbooks around the country. And there's very little patience for deviating from that, you know. Well, we're off to a great start. Already.
Sunshine and rainbows.
Well, yeah, like that's kind of why I wanted to start the podcast, you know, like there's great things about living here, and there's things that people try to sweep under the carpet and never talk about, and people get blindsided by it every year. And a lot of people, you know, end up suffering alone in silence, and
totally.
People think it's just me.
Totally.
It's not just you. It's not just you. What is your experience working in Japan so far?
I was an ALT for 5 years, and now I teach preschool. So I've taught in Hokkaido, Miyagi. So I guess my age range is from junior high, elementary school, preschool.
Okay, so schools the whole time, like public or private schools the whole time?
Yeah, public school and private school, yeah.
Okay,
No,
interesting. Kevin?
This is going to be kind of long.
Go for it.
I came to Japan on vacation with the intention of teaching English in colleges in the U.S. But I enjoyed being here so much that I just stayed and took the first job that was available, which was a public school ALT for junior high schools. So I did that in Kyushu for several years, and then once I got a little bit of experience, they sent me to a very, very rural area for a few months, where I got to be much more involved with the day-to-day stuff. Once I left there, they moved me to Hiroshima. In Hiroshima, my company had just gotten a huge contract, so we were teaching at every school in Hiroshima City and basically making up the curriculum as we went.
Ooh.
Once that finished, came back to Kyushu, started doing the private school and Eon Mall stuff for a little while before I wound up spending 2 years teaching as an elementary school ALT, which was terrible. Then moving on to being like one of the head teachers of an international school
Mm.
before settling into my current position, where I'm basically doing the head teacher position of a chain of English schools and outside satellite classrooms.
Sounds busy.
Does sound busy. It's a long career.
It-
So I think
I've enjoyed most
if
of it.
I... Oh, sorry, I was talking over you. Please, could you say that again?
I've gripes aside, I really have enjoyed most of the working here.
Right. There we go. So yeah, I kind of wanted to ask about that. Like, most people, especially people who come here to teach English, which is the majority of, people from abroad, most people who come here to teach English, like, it seems like they have their fill after a year or two of Japan and teaching in Japan, working in Japan. So what was it about working here or teaching English or whatever else? Like, what was it that you enjoyed enough to stay here for over 10 years in this industry, in this field?
I think for me, it's just because I teach like 2 and 3 year olds now. Like you can really see what you put in there. Like because
Mm,
I'm not just teaching them like English, but I'm teaching them like life skills, how to be little humans. And so to
mm.
be able to see them like actually grow and see their skills develop, for me, that's been pretty amazing.
Right on, right on. Kevin?
I had a hell of a time studying foreign languages when I was in school. It was
Mm,
it was far and away my least enjoyable subject, and I was absolutely terrible at it.
mm.
So when I was handed the opportunity to try to make that thing that I absolutely hated doing fun for lots and lots of kids, that was really appealing.
I remember high school Spanish class in the US, and when I was a student, nobody gave a fuck about Spanish. Nobody gave a damn about that class. And yet, me and my classmates, most of the boys were obsessed with Dragon Ball Z. So we would go to this now defunct website, planetnamek dot. Might have been com, it might have been .org, but we went to Planet Namek because it had some like basic Japanese lessons on the website, and like during Spanish class, like we're sitting there practicing Watashi no Namae over and over again. So yeah, I think for a lot of people that stick around, a lot of people that stay in the English teaching game for a while, like I think there is a lot of overlap in that, like wanting to share the joy of learning language and watching students progress, and like genuinely enjoying watching the development of your students. Like I think that's a shared sentiment amongst the people that stick around for a long time, and honestly the people that are best at the job. So hats off, sensei. I'm really glad to hear those answers. So thank you very much.
I will say real quick, I think another reason too is, because a lot of the time we are the first like international or foreigner person a lot of kids will meet.
Right.
In the back of your mind, you kind of want to be like that good impression. Like we're not that scary person you see on TV or reading books or like see on the
Right.
internet. We are people, and
Hmm.
just like you, we have a heartbeat, we have a mind that thinks, and we have thoughts and dreams too.
Next question. What differences in work culture in Japan have struck you the most? For example, for me, just seeing people sleep at their desk and that being an okay thing, like kind of shocking as an American. It seems like sleeping at your desk is like a sign of how hard you're working.
I've heard that too.
Yeah. So that's one thing, but I want to hear from the both of you as well.
I guess for me, was like my first interaction with like the Bonenkais, like the end of the year parties or like the after sports day parties. That was a part of work culture I never, because like, and back in my home country in America, you have like after work dinners or after work drinks, but that's about it. You don't have like a full on party and then a second party and a sometimes third party, and then you go back to work like nothing happened. I was like, oh, okay.
uh, things do be happening.
Oh
Things
yeah, things happen so
absolutely.
much, and like you want to like, remember that time, but you can't because no one talks about it. You're like, oh, I guess we don't. Okay.
Uh-huh. I would avoid that what is it? There's Nijikai Sanjikai, I guess? Like second party, third party. Maybe avoid Sanjikai just in general. It's not your friend.
I went because I wasn't that drunk because I just wanted to see it because I'm a nosy
Ah,
person.
okay.
So,
Okay.
and honestly, like I feel like that's when you really see your teachers be themselves. Like they drop the mask and it's like, okay, you're actually funny.
Some of them.
Yeah, yeah,
Some
yeah.
of some of them. Some of them just think they're funny, but anyway. Kevin.
It's not so much for me the overwork, the sleeping at your desk, the staying long hours, is how much of that was done because of this weird, like, parasitic relationship between the higher ups and like the lower level staff employees. So
Yeah.
Mm,
the teachers would when I my first school, I was at a junior high school, and no one would leave when they could. They would stay at
right.
their desks, and they would not work very hard. Like they weren't grinding. They were get up, go to the copying machine, have some coffee, maybe grade a paper, talk to the teacher next to you, go back, do something on the computer. Just really just
Mm,
running out the clock when the clock had already run out. And then there was,
mm,
the vice principal was up at his or her desk. At that one, it was a guy, um, who would be doing even less, just pecking away at his computer or shuffling papers around. And then there was the Kocho Sensei principal in his office doing who knows what. But I mean, he had a putter in there, and they would, like, no one wanted to be the first to leave. So like the teachers didn't want to leave before the vice principal because that would make him think that they weren't working very hard, and he didn't want to leave before them because they didn't want to think that the vice principal was lazy. um,
mm.
and it was just this weird, like, circular thing where it was just everyone was inconveniencing everyone else. And one of the shining moments was a fellow teacher who was working at a different school, and he would leave at 4:15. Like, that was his time. He finished, and he would leave. And one day he got up, and the teacher next to him goes, "Oh, I'm so jealous. I wish I could go home."
Mm-hmm.
And he had a moment. He's just like, "You can. You can. You could go home whenever you want. You could have gone home before I did, but you don't. You stay here because you don't want the vice principal to see you leaving before him, and he stays here because he doesn't want to go before you go. And any of you could go whenever you want. You could go home. You could grade your tests at home. You could do all this. You could see your families. You could see your wives. You could see your husbands, but you don't. You could do it anytime you want, but you don't." Just everyone looked at him like, and he just goes, I've got to go now. And we had a,
Mic drop.
well, he didn't, it got away from him. He wasn't happy that he had done this. But we had
Mm.
a meeting at the company, maybe a week or two later, where they're like, "Okay, don't do that."
Wait, so was this a foreign teacher?
I was about to give him an Oscar, but okay, all right.
like you are yes, he was from Chicago.
Ah,
But like you're just a teacher, you're a guest at the school. Please do not, point out systemic issues in very public fashions. It's not appreciated.
don't stir the pot.
That's a pretty big issue. I've joked for years that like people just don't want to see their wives.
Oh,
That's
me?
the only
Yeah.
people just don't want to see their wives. That's why they don't go home on time. They could go home on time. And like part of it, there is this societal pressure, and again, like somewhat, puritanical. I'm, on the outside looking in as far as like the Puritans or whatever. I was raised Catholic, so I don't know too much about them, but it does seem like the appearance of working hard is very important. Whether or not hard work is actually going on. So like if, sensei at the school that Kevin's anecdote friend, if that sensei was like, you know what, you're right, and he went home at 4:15, his wife would be like, what are you
Why
doing?
are you home?
I can't even point out, like I can't even like make fun of it. Like in my position now, I do the same thing. No one at my company has ever seen me arrive at work. Like I'm just there when they get
You're
there.
just there.
Like no one has seen me leave. I'm there when they go. Like they're like, all right, I'm going home for the night. It's like, all right, well, thanks for your hard work. But yeah, it's what's done. In my defense, I tell them to go home. Your time is up. You are no longer being paid. Do not work for free. I've got stuff to do. Please go home.
I see. I respect that. At least you're like, go. Just go, please.
So, like, is that the reason why you're still sticking around? Like, I don't know if you're salaried or not. You don't have to reveal, your salary information or whatever for the Tokyo Tea Party podcast. But, like, are you actually working the whole time? And that's why you're still at work,
No.
after everybody leaves?
No. I mean, I've gotten pretty good at time management and things like this. So it's not like I have nothing to do. I do get stuff done, but a lot of it is for, appearances.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm pretty sure in the English teaching world, Kevin actually said something like, like earlier about, like, again, his anecdote friend being told something like, hey, you're like a guest at the school. And like, I think when it comes to teaching English, we are kind of seen as like people on permanent working holiday or something, and we're not sort of held to the same expectations as far as workload or responsibilities or other kinds of expectations. But I should probably try to do this topic again with people who don't work in education, because I wonder if, like programmers or lawyers even, like if they have more of that pressure to stick around for hours and hours, or even translators, I guess. I know a few translators.
Oh, I'm sure it'd be completely different, like someone who is outside of the education realm, because then there's people that work with Japanese companies and then international companies, because even with those two, I'm sure there's huge differences between workload and like work life.
So on that note, like, would you like to have more responsibility? And I guess Kevin is kind of, he's the head honcho now. Honcho's actually a Japanese word.
What?
Yeah, honcho, like that's a Japanese word. They brought that over after the war.
No way.
World War II. Yeah.
I thought it was Spanish.
It is Japanese.
It's Japanese. Well, I guess like Kevin can sort of answer from the perspective of like before he started being a head teacher and being in a leadership role, but would you be happy to have more responsibility if it meant more respect?
Absolutely. Because there's a lot of people who have a lot to offer, especially people who have experience doing these things and are not yet completely, tied to the system. So
Mm,
it's it was very. I mean, it was kind of nice when I got the big chair, so to speak, to be able to make these changes that had been
mm-hmm.
bugging me for so long. But the other thing is that I had to figure out very quickly to listen to some of these newer people with new ideas and to let them have as much responsibility as they felt like they were comfortable taking. Otherwise, we were just going to be stuck in the same position that we've been in all of these years. And that's a double-edged sword. You have more responsibility. That means that there's more stress, more headache. Things can go wrong, but I think
Mm,
it's better for just about everybody to have that responsibility, have that experience, kind of like level up your ability for the overall benefit of, I mean, everybody, rather than just being like, just do this, don't make waves, and collect your paycheck at the end of the month.
So I think I've mentioned this on the podcast a few times. So I'll just go in briefly. But a few years ago, I started working in high schools. There's a lot more responsibility for high school English teachers than there are for people working in junior high school or elementary school or anything under that. And the responsibility, like, I wasn't sure I would be able to handle the responsibilities that were given to me, but I was, and I am glad for the responsibility. I'm glad for the experience because, like, it showed me what I'm capable of. It showed me my value, and it helped me become confident in doing all sorts of things, like, making a podcast. So sometimes I do miss just being a human tape recorder. Because, like, I was actually, on the jet program. Sometimes I was a jet. Sometimes I was a human tape recorder, and I was getting paid more than what I'm doing now, working my ass off. But that's the economy today. So Brittni, what about you? Like, more responsibility for more respect, or nah?
Nah. Well, okay, I shouldn't say nah. Um, I think the like where I'm at now and how I feel at my current school, like I feel like I do because like so my school is pretty small. We have two main teachers, an assistant teacher, and a manager. So that's like what, one, two, three, four of us
Mhm.
in a building. So I would say overall, like it's not just one, but it's like we're actually like a team. So we have like shared responsibility,
Mm.
which is kind of nice. I don't. I guess for me personally, I think if I were to take on more responsibility, I would just feel more stressed.
Mhm.
Like there's
Okay.
more things I'd have to make sure of, take care of, you know, and then knowing my mind, there's also like other things I would think of just suddenly, and then when I'm thinking of those other things, there's other things, and it's just a vicious cycle. So I think
Right.
I'm okay. I'm content for the time being.
I would imagine there's more of a flat hierarchy there. So yeah, like in that situation, yeah, like I could see you working pretty hard as it is because with fewer hands, like just naturally responsibility ends up evening out. So okay.
I think it's also helpful too because me and my co-teacher, we both have been teaching at this company around the same amount of time. So it's not like I'm talking down to her or she's talking down to me. Like we both know what to
Right.
do, and so we don't have to like, how sometimes you not want to say baby or like like hold someone's hand when they're,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thankful that I don't have to do that.
What are some things you think Japanese companies, schools, employers in general could do to make more inclusive work environments?
Well, that's a good one.
More inclusive, how? Exactly.
For the jet set, I guess, like well, no, not like jet program, like for foreigners or
I
immigrants.
mean, of course, reasonable accommodations would go a long way towards helping that. And I feel like a lot of Japanese companies, education and otherwise, um, are keenly aware that the foreign workers they have, are culturally different. They have their own languages, they have their own, you know, traditions and things like that. But if the people running some of these Japanese companies could understand that, yes, it is a different culture, but it's not some insurmountable hurdle that cannot be overcome by people who want to work at things. Um,
Mm,
like, yes, there is a language barrier at first. You may have people from different work cultures who aren't used to, staying late for no discernible reason, or used to following these weird traditional things that are no longer useful, but we can do it.
mm.
It might take a little bit of time to get used to it, but I mean, you see a lot more foreign people working in non-education jobs now, right? I mean, it's not just me seeing this.
Oh no, I definitely
Yeah.
see it too.
I don't know why there was this thought for so many years that only like native-born Japanese people could work at Lawson or Family Mart, you know, um,
Right.
or why only people from certain English-speaking countries could teach a foreign language.
Mm.
So just getting past that initial, I guess, reverse culture shock would open a lot of doors to a lot of people.
That was beautiful. I wish I could like put that on a t-shirt and wear it. That's that's some experience talking right there. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so for that. Thank you so much. Um Brittni.
I think for me, because I'm gonna pull back to like my ALT days where there were just some teachers that didn't know how to like utilize their native speaking teacher,
Say
you
that
know.
again, sister. Please say that again.
And
Say it
I
louder.
for those in the back who can't hear me, but no, I've always thought that since I started as teaching that there should be at least some workshops or like something for schools who are gonna have ALTs to like kind of learn how to use their ALT, learn how to interact with the ALT. Like we're not aliens. I mean, technically, if you want to, whatever. But like we're people that are gonna work with other people. So it's okay to talk to us. It's okay to like say, hey, can we do this? Or hey, can we not do that? Like we're not mind readers. And so that's and
Right.
I'm not the only person with that thought. Like many of my teacher friends wish that some schools would have like training sessions on how to work with your ALT and how to make it, just make it flow better. Not this
Mm-hmm.
like you can feel the boundary, you can feel the wall, and when I had classes like that, those classes usually didn't go well. But the teachers
Mm.
who like stepped out of their comfort zone and tried to actually communicate with me, those were the better classes.
That brings to mind a workshop I went to years and years and years ago where it was the ALTs and the JTEs in a seminar, in a workshop, being held by a Japanese teacher of English. That's what JT stands for, by the way. And he spoke in English the whole time. And not only did he speak in English the entire time, this seminar workshop just so happened to occur during the year where I was working with my worst Japanese coworker ever, even up until now. And the presenter was laying into these teachers for an hour, just preaching the gospel in English at these people. accosting them for not using us in class in a useful way, for treating us like we're aliens, for being lazy and not treating the job as something more than a robotic operation that is performed until one reaches retirement age.
Yes, 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 yes.
The energy in that room, the energy in that room. Oh Lord, the Japanese teachers, like he wasn't okay. He wasn't like, scolding them for the entire time, but he did absolutely take some of the, bad teachers to account. And nobody betrayed any emotion, including the ALTs, because you could see some of the Japanese teachers were a little pissed off. And some of the ALTs were just like dying, holding back their joy in, having in being seen and being heard,
Like, I think it's one thing when like another teacher says it, but when like the Japanese teacher acknowledges it and then points it out and it continues to like tell other people, you're like, it's not just me.
Of course, the next Monday, like, things went right back to business.
Oh, of course,
Things went
of course.
Things went right back to the way they were. What are some aspects of work culture you think employers could improve on?
I think like the quote unquote like mandatory overtime, like obviously for like a lot of English teachers, we don't really have overtime. Well, I do, but it's, whatever. But outside of the like education realm, it's just, to me, it's kind of sad how they're working all those hours, but like for what? Like we mentioned earlier, like yes, you're working a lot, but what are you working towards? Are you finishing jobs, or are you just there to like push your pen around to make sure you don't get in trouble for leaving early? It's like that kind of work culture. Like there should be a better work balance. That's what I'm trying to say. A better work and life balance. I think a lot of people would be a lot more happier.
I think so too. Like when it's quitting time, I quit. I'm done. And I go home, and I actually wish I had more time at home because there's things that I would like to do. But, including editing this podcast, which takes a lot of time. But anyway, Kevin, what about you?
This is probably going to sound weird coming from me, but a lot of the companies that I've worked in are the people at the top are largely male, and I feel like if these guys could take women's issues into account more.
Yes.
Beautiful.
The shit that I've had to come down on managers about the male managers who were, let's say, insensitive to some of the issues that our female staff have. They have been extremely uncomfortable conversations. And I don't think necessarily it comes from any place of like misogyny or anything. I just honestly think that some of these guys don't have a clue about some of these issues, and it leads to a lot of friction where it doesn't have to, and that can be extended to a lot of other groups as well. Women, especially neurodivergent people. There's that old saying that the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. A lot of unnecessary hammering on neurodivergent people who make up I believe, disproportionately large amount of the workforce in some of these companies.
That like, and this podcast, I've said it before, but like just talking to women about their lives. Like, I don't have any like agenda or whatever. Like, I had to do a double take on asking that question before, because I almost said, what are some aspects of woke culture you think employers could improve on? I don't have an agenda. Like, I am a progressive. I do, believe in equality for women and minorities, neurodivergent people, gender minorities, etc., etc. But just talking to women I have learned so much about problems that affect them here that I've never had to worry about. I've never had to, like so many times I just hear about, like, even before we started recording, I was talking with Brittni a little bit about this unfortunate incident she
Oh,
had.
the grumpy grandpa?
The grumpy grandpa. Go ahead.
Oh, just I guess there's a lot of microaggressions and like little things that I feel like most men wouldn't. I mean, I've seen men push other men, but like for example, it's at the grocery store, and instead of saying like "excuse me" or like "sumimasen," this rude grandpa just starts trying to push me, and I'm not the one. At that time, I was definitely not the one because you don't have to push me. I will scoot over. Just let me get my chicken. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of being polite about it, he was just, well, I went off on him. Like you can, like, you're being rude. So he tried to like grumble back at me, and I grumbled back. Like, no, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not gonna step aside just so you can look at your chicken too. Why can't we look at it together? Don't be rude.
Right. Yeah.
But I think that's a lot
So,
of the things. Sorry,
go ahead.
I was gonna say in the workforce for women, microaggressions, and then especially like I'm not a mom, but I've seen it. Like, they don't say it, but it's kind of felt like when their kid gets sick and they have to leave early or they have to miss work. Like, it's said but unsaid, and I feel like I would hate to work in certain places as a parent because you could already feel like the internal groan, like, oh, she's missing work again because of her kid.
Right,
Like,
right,
I'm sure that parent doesn't want to miss work, because that's their time, their
right.
money that's going to get cut, especially if they ran out of their days. So I think there should be a better, I guess, thing for parents, like better situations for parents,
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
not just women, but like fathers too. That because there are dads who also take care of their kids.
Right. That's an enlightened response from Kevin. And, like, again, more of this perspective that I don't get as a large, physically imposing man in this country. Very few people have ever tried to push me. um, it's like, the few times it has occurred, they knew it wasn't gonna work. But they, I don't know, they had something to prove. But I really am thankful to Brittni for even coming back, for being the first one on the podcast when she had no reason to trust me at all, or had no sort of finished product to judge whatever I was going to be doing.
I'm just happy to be asked back too. So yay!
By the way, I got so into things, I forgot to ask, why did you want to talk about this?
Oh, I think like most people, when you come to a new place and you have your previous work experience, you think, oh, maybe it'll be similar, maybe it'll be fun, maybe it'll be different, and it is different, and sometimes not in the best way. I've been
Mm,
fortunate where it hasn't like made me break or like it's completely like want to make me go back home. I've had situations
mm-hmm,
where it has kind of like cracked me a little bit, but
mm,
I guess it's kind of like, I don't want to say like a warning, but you can't expect like the things you do back at home, like work wise, are gonna like happen here in Japan because that's just not how it's gonna be. And sometimes you have to let that go just to give yourself a little sanity.
mm, 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 mm,
Because
mm.
I think a few people, not a few people, but I'm sure a lot of people have had that happen where they come in here thinking, oh, this is gonna be great, yay, and then it's kind of like, oh, ha ha ha, okay.
Yeah, culture shock will hit you at work as well. I kind of feel like I get culture shock like once a year. No matter how long I'm here, like I feel like every once in a while, like I'll get into a groove and I'll get used to things, and then something will take me out of the groove and I'll be removed from like autopilot, and my comfort zone, and then I will have a very adverse reaction to my situation here. But like this is another great reason to have this discussion, to help people sort of get an idea of what's coming if they do come over to work. So
I think another big issue, or not issue, but thing with the work culture is just like people who don't. Maybe I said it earlier, but like sometimes you have to let it go. Like you can't keep comparing. Like I've met people who are always comparing things to back home. It's like it's not. It's just you can't keep doing that. You're just going to continue to stay unhappy. You're like, well, back at home I do this. Well, back at home I do this. Like, well, this is not your home. You chose to come here, so.
Yeah, at some point, it's you gotta make peace with where you are, or you gotta find yourself somewhere else.
Exactly.
So we just talked about like what employers in Japan could work on, but what are some aspects of Japanese work culture or work ethic or what have you that you think the rest of the world could benefit from adopting? We're usually not thinking in that direction, and something that I thought up was like, in Japan, people at work, and people can be polite to a fault, of course, but like in Japan, if you go to McDonald's, you're gonna get professional service at McDonald's, more or less. Like, you're going to get people that take their job seriously. People respect the relationship between customer and worker, server, etc. If you go to a fancy hotel, or if you go to a cheap economy hotel, like, people take their jobs seriously. They feel this sort of responsibility, I think, to put on their best face and try to give you the best service possible. And I really appreciate that. And I know it's not, every single hotel and not every single McDonald's or whatever, but oh yeah, we don't like McDonald's right now. I'm not going to go into that, but
No, I know what you mean. Customer service.
Yeah, customer service, that forward-facing attitude, the customer or client-facing attitude. I really like that, and like especially as compared to people back home working at a part-time job that look annoyed and look miserable, and like, I understand you might be miserable and you have reason to be miserable, but it makes the experience better for me anyway. So maybe it's a selfish answer, but that's something that I find myself thinking about sometimes. So what about the two of you?
I guess for me, jokingly, health insurance. For those Americans, if you know, you know. But on the, I guess my second one would be just like, and a lot of my schools and stuff, people kind of tend to leave their drama at home. Like, they don't bring it with them to work. And it's kind of nice. I mean, like I said, I'm a nosy person, and sometimes I want to hear the drama. But it's also nice to not always hear people's, like, business being thrown out there. You kind of keep to yourself, you do your work, and, you will talk to your coworker or whatever. But for the most part, everyone's kind of in their own bubble, doing their own thing. And, there's some places back in my home country where you know about person's business from A to Z, and it's always something different the next day and the day after that. So it's kind of like exhausting.
Keeping work and home, or the work life and the private life, separated. I can feel you on that. Yeah. Okay, Kevin?
There was one thing that was taught to me when I started working at the Eon Mall, and it made getting through just every future job so much smoother. And it was, when you make a mistake or when you do something wrong, don't make an excuse, just apologize and move on.
Oh, that's a good, yeah.
As an American, that was one of the most foreign concepts that I've encountered here so far. Because, of course, we it's like, oh, it's not my fault that the trains were late, or I got held up at this, or this person caused this issue, for whatever reason, it's not my fault.
There's
Whereas
always an excuse, right?
it's like we don't want to hear it. It's just like, okay, sorry, I'm late. Go sit down.
Right.
It's like, oh, I'm sorry this happened. Won't happen again. Okay, sit down. And it made things so much smoother, like with very, very few exceptions. And the many years after learning this, anytime there was an issue with any kind of issue, rather than try to excuse it or justify it, just whoever I'm talking to, sorry about that, we'll fix it going forward. And 99% of the time they've just been like, oh, okay, cool. And that's just it. It made things so much smoother to just sorry and move on. And that is, I think if everyone back in the States or wherever like got on board with this, oh, that would just make things so much smoother. Like that is something I would love to export back to the US. I mean, it's basically the adult version of like when a kid does something wrong and they say go menasai, and the person responds iyo, and then it's settled, it's done.
Right on. So I'm not a cultural anthropologist or whatever, so I can't talk about this off the cuff, but like if I remember correctly, the US and a lot of Western countries are guilt cultures, guilt societies, and a lot of Asian or Eastern cultures are more shame-based cultures. So like the apology is more important in many cases where an infraction has occurred. Like the apology is more important than the reason the infraction occurred in the first place. And like even if you have like a rock solid reason for why something happened, satisfaction will not be felt by the afflicted party until and unless you apologize. And it's taken me a while to get used to, but I think that is something helpful to understand the situation in Japan anyway when you're at work, or just your relationships with Japanese people in general.
Definitely.
What are your best workplace experiences up until now? Like, what has been your best place of employment and why?
I guess I've only had 2 jobs. I was with a dispatch company and then my current job. And I guess my current job, because I feel like a person, they treat me like a person. They trust me, because I'm teaching children. And so it's nice to feel like what I, suggest or what I teach, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're fine, you're okay. We trust you, we can understand you. When like as a dispatch company, it's really a toss up. Some schools will trust you and kind of, let you do your thing, and then some schools will keep you as far away and separated from everything and just treat you like an extra, So I guess if I have to boil it down, it's just feeling like I'm actually needed. That's been like, yeah, that's mine.
Okay. Kevin?
I think with the exception of that international school, every company that I've worked at has had way more good than bad. But my best experience was when I was in Hiroshima, and it was like uncharted waters. My company and like my colleagues were like making up the curriculum as we went along. There was very little in the way of lesson plan. There was no more human tape recorder stuff, and I was going to about 50 different schools per month.
Oh wow!
And one of those schools was on an island. Like the only way you could get there was to take a sketchy little ferry. It was just like some guy's boat that held like 10 people. He had a like one of those like 1 cup sake things like on his dashboard for good luck.
Oh,
It ran once there and once back per day. And
Wow.
this was a school, a combination, kindergarten, elementary school, junior high school, and high school. And it was for children who, for various reasons, had to be removed from their homes. So they did not warn me in advance, but there was like a lot to consider there. And my first day, I had a class with some elementary school kids, including one girl with we call it selective mutism. Do you know what this is?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had good luck with kids with this for a while, but she came around very quickly and started talking in English about stuff that she liked. And the next time that I came back, they brought me in front of like all of the student body, and they were like, "This is Kevin Sensei. He will be our English teacher for the next year or so." And I was like, "Well, why didn't you do that the first time?" And they're like, "Well, because we didn't know you actually knew what you were doing." So yeah, I got to be very, very involved there. And I got to work with a lot of kids who, and my lessons are, I do a lot, not as much now, but I historically did a lot of shtick. Like I did a lot of stuff that was influenced from comedy and from pro wrestling to get a reaction to keep the conversation going. And like these kids really enjoyed it. The teachers I worked with really had a great time.
Okay.
That was my best experience. And it's basically like an orphanage too. And I did look into doing like, so if I wanted to like foster like a classroom of these kids, would that be possible? And like, no, not for you.
Oh, that's too bad.
It's situations like that kind of like make your, crappy days or like your crappy pastimes kind of like just stay in the back of your mind, because it's those bright moments that, definitely keep you going.
There's a song from I believe they're from Sweden. It's a power metal group, and like one of the lines is he talks about his years of starlight and his days of rain. And like that's about the ratio I've dealt with working in Japan. Years of starlight, days of rain.
That's good. I like that.
Thank you both. Thank you, Kevin.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brittni. Thank you, Brittni, for coming back.
Thanks for having me again.
Thank you for listening to the Tokyo Tea Party Podcast. A very special thanks to our guests, Brittni and Kevin. Vibrant tropical salsa and rhythm of Havana, courtesy of Toon Tank and Pineapple Music. For info on today's guests, please check the show notes. Did you enjoy today's episode? Give this episode a like, share it with your friends, or leave a comment on social media. If you find this podcast especially valuable, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Tokyo Tea Party Podcast, all one word. I've been your host, Samuel Darbouz. Be easy, y'all. Mina genki de ne. Peace.